Blind people or people who have low vision are forced to face the challenges that are presented in social sphere and undergo severe psychological pressures. The demands of the life and constant stresses of modern lifestyle take a toll on their psychosocial status. The differences in the family setup in which the blind person is brought up, combined with their educational and social differences, causes a major difference in the so-called psychosocial adjustment sphere. It is understood that the level of adjustment greatly depends on the individual himself. A lot of study and detailed discussions reveals that the visually impaired have different levels of adjustment to social and psychological challenges, which is often made possible through proper intervention of the family and friends. The self-esteem and a positive attitude instilled at an early age into the minds of the blind goes a long way in better socio-psycho adjustment, thereby enabling the blind person to lead life to the fullest. Individual differences and psychosocial adjustment. The time of the onset of visual impairment acts as a major factor in determining the individual's acceptance level. It is seen that people who are born blind are much more adaptive to social conditions than those who have lost their sight after some illness or accident. The reason can be attributed to the fact that the person born blind are able to accept the fact since they never know the importance of vision. Whereas in the case of people who have had good vision but during the lifetime lose the vision may have to face the mental trauma and depression. Losing something that we have is much difficult to accept than not having something. A sudden loss of vision causes a complete shock in the mind of the individual and also his family. He may not be able to come to common terms for quite some time, and this delays his development process. Such individuals are often found to shell themselves by not communicating with the external world due to the inability to do so. The person born blind does not know how the world looks alike, and so his imaginary skills help him to overcome the pressures of life. He is open to adapt to the world and learns things as if it is the right way to do so. He is under the assumption that other people are also like him, and so there is not strong barriers as compared to the person who lost his vision much later in his life. An individual's ability to cope with such unexpected events and courage to get back to normalcy all directly affects his social participation. The psychological state of mind also greatly differs for visually impaired people. Those who lose their vision at a later stage of their life feel a sense of negligence from the society. The reason can be due to the fact that they have seen the world and the different type of people. They can imagine the societal ignorance towards blind people, which again cause severe psychological disturbances. Such pressures act as an hindrance in their social communication. The reverse can also have a drastic impact on the self-esteem of the person with visual impairment. A person who has low vision may often be classified as blind by many sighted individuals of the society. This also affects the mental state of the person with low vision, as the reality is completely deterred. Proper classification of the visually impaired as low vision, residual vision, and born blind enables in better development of the people. Social classification plays a vital role in the proper molding of the child with visual disability, as this boosts up the confidence and enables the parents to provide the right type of social environment to the child. Society and its ignorance can often pose a barrier for proper development of the visually impaired in terms of social and psychological status. Self-esteem for visually disabled. The self-esteem concept is often discussed, as many people are under the misconception that visually impaired lack in self-esteem. But studies have revealed that blind people also have high self-esteem, just like the sighted peers. There is no impact of visual disability on the self-esteem of an individual, which is more of psychological state. However, there were differences in the perception of self-esteem between the blind and the people with low vision. Many of the parents of the children with low vision are lesser supportive and unable to understand the child's status. As a result of this, people with low vision tend to show lower trend of behavior and undergo more of emotional issues. The people with low vision or complete loss of vision had similar kind of self-esteem, which is usually high. The social interaction enables the sighted people to have wider social circles, and their network of friends and relatives is much wider. As a result, they exhibit higher degree of happiness in the social environment through their sharing and caring. Studies have also revealed that people with low vision or no vision do not differ much in perspective. Such people, though, do not have wider social network, but they are quite happy with the support received from their immediate circle of family and friends. Family is the first contact for people with visual disability, and that seems to satisfy the social necessity, thereby giving them the required support and guidance. Self-concept can be understood in simple terms as a set of rules and attitudes that an individual will define about themselves. This creates a unique identity for every individual and subsequently creates self-esteem. The concept of self-esteem also paves the way for creation of rules for behavior that forms an impression in the minds of the onlookers about the individual. The self-esteem and the corresponding behavior have a direct impact on the personal and social spheres of an individual. Self-esteem and its level in case of the visual impaired depend on the ability of the individual to accept the disability. Visually impaired must develop a positive self-concept so that they can lead a successful social life. Positive in the pretext means ability to perform the daily living skills and an attitude to accept the disability and live with it and face the challenges of life with confidence. If the individual with visual disability is unable to accept his real situation, then there are chances of developing a negative self-esteem. This creates a sense of detachment, and thereby he completely disconnects from the social environment for fear of rejection. When the visually impaired are often shown sympathy and pitied, they get dejected. This also becomes a basis for depression and other mental problems. Similarly, many of the personal emotions like love, marriage begins with external appearances. Body language and looks plays a major role in the concept of impression making. Blind people imagine themselves to be ugly or disfigured due to the lack of vision. They feel they are unattractive, and so again adds to the negative self-esteem. Timely support and intervention from family can go to a great extent help the visually impaired from getting into such negative feeling. Orientation problems and issues faced by the blind. Loss of a vision is a very rejecting condition for an individual faces. A blind person suffers from both emotional and social implications that not only affect him but also his family. People born blind to some extent, are able to cope up with a medical condition and try to live with it. But people who have lost their vision after serious illness or accidents experience a total changeover of their life. Such people are more vulnerable to issues of psychosocial adjustments. Vision provides the direction for an individual in terms of mobility. When a person lacks vision, he is completely at the mercy of his auditory and tactile senses. Such auditory and tactile clues come with limitations and cannot completely replace the visual clues. Mobility is very much affected for blind people as they cannot get a spatial knowledge of their surroundings. This creates a sense of fear and insecurity. This is much higher in the case of people who have lost their vision at a later stage of their life. People born blind also suffer from restricted mobility, but since they do not know the social surroundings and have never got a chance to view them, actually seems to be a blessing in disguise. But for people who lost their vision due to accidents, know their surroundings and so may take time to get adjusted to the medical state. Visually impaired people need the help and guidance of their family and peers to move. So, this acts as a barrier for their mobility as they may feel ignored at times. Their heavy dependence on their peers may also create a negative feeling in their minds, leading to depression. That's the reason many of the visually impaired people restrict their mobility, communication, and social interactions. Sighted people do not know the way to communicate with the blind, and this discourages them from involving in any kind of communication. Blind people are also able to feel this embarrassment and so make the situation all the more uncomfortable. The general attitude by the sighted people towards the blind is that of sympathy and pity. These actually create a sense of embarrassment in the minds of the blind. They feel that they can never fit into society, and such pitied approaches made by the sighted people causes emotional outbursts amongst the blind. Isolation is the end result of such situations, which drastically affects the psychological state of the blind. Even the conversation tends to be limited, as the sighted often makes use of facial expressions and other gestures to communicate their ideas and opinions. Blind people cannot interpret such expressions, and only the auditory and tactile clues are grasped by them. However, it is not possible for the sighted to completely express their feelings through auditory clues. The different emotions that can be intercepted into the conversation are quite restricted, and so long pauses and silences make the conversation embarrassing. Psychological issues faced by the blind. The psychological state of the blind tends to be very sensitive. This can be differentiated between the people who are born blind and those who have lost their vision in an accident or illness. The people born blind are kind of accustomed to their condition, but still they grow older, they understand the external environment. Their disability poses a serious problem for their social interaction. They become sensitive to people and their feelings towards them. People who lose their vision in an accident come under a lot of psychological pressure. They have to not only face the challenge of vision loss, but also the trauma that usually persists after an accident or in any mishap. They may take time to digest the fact that they have indeed lost their vision. All these years they were able to see the world with a lot of admiration, and they know how things look like, how they work, and how people look like, and so on. Sudden loss of vision puts them in complete darkness, unable to visualize anything. All these years, their eyes were their guide in everything they do. But after the loss of their eyesight, they must rely on other means of communication. Spatial knowledge could have been developed to some extent, which again depends on the age of the onset of blindness in an individual. The mobility factor greatly affects the individual. All these years, the individual had been independent to move around and do his daily living skills without any support system. But now, he has to depend on his family or friends for everything. This dependence may cause anxiety and depression in their minds. They may feel a kind of bitterness for having been affected by such a mishap. If it is due to illness that they lost their eyesight, then they will start cursing their fate. Such emotional outbursts are quite common among such visually impaired people. This is the way they vent out their psychological feelings. Inferior feeling is common among all kinds of visually impaired people, be it the people who are born blind or the people lost vision due to accidents. They start comparing themselves to their sighted peers. Such comparison creates a feeling of inferiority, thereby causing negative vibrations in their mind. Besides, the feeling of denial in social sphere adds to the psychological worries, causing greater depression and disappointment. The psychological issues of the blind are many, and their ways to express comes in different forms like anger, violent behaviors, isolation, and inability to interact with the friends and so on. They rely on the family support in every way. Visually impaired faces a lot of psychological and social problems. Their loss of vision is often sympathized by the sighted people. But does the blind expect such sympathy? Many studies have revealed that the self-esteem of the blind is the same as that of the sighted person. So, it truly holds well that the blind people do not expect sympathy, as it causes more embarrassment. Their need of acceptance is felt much more rather than the need of sympathy and pity. Social interactions can be made much more effective with implementation of several intervention techniques, as a lot of progress has been made in this sphere. Proper intervention at the right time may help the visually impaired in leading a high esteemed life. For this, the support of the family, teachers and the friends form top priority.